From the rugged shores of Corsica, a boy with a burning ambition would rise to conquer a continent. Born Napoleon di Buonaparte, he was an outsider at the French Military Academy, a small, quiet student with a thick accent, often ridiculed by his aristocratic peers. But within this young man lay a mind of unparalleled military genius. As the old world of kings and queens crumbled during the French Revolution, chaos became his ladder. With cannon fire and audacious tactics, he saved the Republic in Paris, and his name began to echo through the streets. A star was born, and its ascent would be breathtakingly swift. In Italy, he transformed a demoralized army into an unstoppable force, achieving victory after stunning victory. His dispatches home were not just military reports. They were masterpieces of propaganda that captivated the French people. He was more than a general. He was a hero, a savior. Returning to a politically unstable France, he saw his moment. In a bold coup d'état in 1799, he seized power, becoming first consul. The soldier had become the statesman, but his ambition knew no bounds. In 1804, in the grand Notre Dame Cathedral, with the Pope as a spectator, he took the crown and placed it on his own head. Napoleon Bonaparte was now Emperor of the French. His reign was defined by war. He was a master of the battlefield, a whirlwind of strategic brilliance. At the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805, considered his greatest masterpiece, he crushed the combined armies of Austria and Russia. He moved his Grande Armée with incredible speed, living off the land, always keeping his enemies off balance. He redrew the map of Europe, placing his brothers and relatives on the thrones of conquered nations. He also instituted the Napoleonic Code, a revolutionary legal framework that enshrined principles of liberty and merit, and its influence is still felt around the world today. But his life was not just one of conquest and law. At its heart was a passionate, turbulent, and all-consuming love affair with Josephine de Beaufort. Their letters reveal a relationship of intense devotion and agonizing jealousy. He was the most powerful man in Europe, yet he was vulnerable to her. She was his empress, his confidant. But her inability to provide him with an heir would eventually lead to their tragic divorce. He needed a dynasty to secure his empire, a personal sacrifice for a political necessity that haunted him for the rest of his life. At its peak, the French Empire stretched from the coast of Spain to the plains of Poland. Napoleon seemed invincible, a colossus bestriding the continent. But the seeds of his downfall were already sown. His obsession with defeating Britain led him to the continental system, an economic blockade that crippled European economies and fostered resentment. In Spain, a brutal, protracted guerrilla war drained his resources and manpower, becoming a bleeding ulcer for his empire. The Spanish ulcer showed that his armies were not invincible and that popular resistance could be a formidable foe. Then came the fatal mistake, the invasion of Russia in 1812. He led the largest European army ever assembled, over 500,000 men, deep into the vast Russian plains. The Russians refused to give a decisive battle, instead retreating deeper and deeper, scorching the earth as they went. Napoleon captured a deserted and burning Moscow, but it was a hollow victory. The brutal Russian winter arrived, and the retreat became one of the greatest military disasters in history. Starvation, frostbite, and relentless Cossack raids decimated the Grande Armée. Napoleon abandoned his troops and raced back to Paris, but the myth of his invincibility was shattered forever. The nations of Europe, sensing his weakness, formed a new coalition against him. They drove him back, battle by battle, until they cornered him in France itself. In 1814, with Paris occupied by enemy forces, Napoleon was forced to abdicate. He was exiled to the tiny island of Elba in the Mediterranean. His enemies thought they had finally caged the eagle. They were wrong. For 10 months, he watched and waited, hearing of the growing unpopularity of the restored monarchy in France. He made his move. In one of the most audacious gambles in history, Napoleon escaped from Elba, landed in France with a handful of followers, and began a march to Paris. The soldiers sent to arrest him instead flocked to his banner, chanting "Vive l'Empereur." He reclaimed his throne without a single shot being fired. This period, known as the 100 Days, was his final, desperate roll of the dice. The powers of Europe, stunned by his return, quickly mobilized against him once more. The final confrontation was inevitable. It came on a rain-soaked field in modern-day Belgium, at a place called Waterloo. On June 18, 1815, Napoleon's army clashed with the Allied forces led by the Duke of Wellington. It was a brutal, close-run battle that raged for hours. For a moment, it seemed Napoleon might snatch victory yet again. But the timely arrival of the Prussian army under Gebhard von Blücher turned the tide. The Imperial Guard, Napoleon's elite, made their final valiant stand, but they were overwhelmed. The dream was over. This time, his captors took no chances. Napoleon was exiled to St. Helena, a desolate, windswept rock in the middle of the South Atlantic, thousands of miles from anywhere. Here, under constant British guard, the man who had once ruled an empire spent his final 6 years. He dictated his memoirs, crafting the legend that would outlive him, portraying himself as a champion of liberty betrayed by fate. He died in 1821 at the age of 51, from Corsican outsider to Emperor of Europe. His life was a whirlwind of genius, ambition, and tragedy. Napoleon Bonaparte was gone, but his shadow would loom large over the world for centuries to come. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more journeys into history.